I wanted to! And I liked it!
Hello, Arrowheads! Save your balloons and your ticker tape. Sure, we've hit our milestone 5th episode, but let's pace ourselves. We'll keep it classy with handshakes, Marshawn Lynch touchdown style. Good game. Good game. Good game. Welcome to episode 5 of GATV LOOSED, the week in Arrow for March 19th to 25th, 2017. On this show, a bunch of news, including some that might make you want to burn off your Broadfoot Captain tattoo. We chain episode 517, Kapuishon, up until it tells us what we want to hear. The list brings us a peace offering with the top 3 differently adapted characters, and we take a stance on a costumed Felicity. I'm your host, Matt Tucker, editor and senior writer at GreenArrowTV, and let's jump right into the news. As always, news of the week can be found at GreenArrowTV.com. Our first item this week, back to the beginning. Stephen Amell says, "Hello, old friend." Amell shares a familiar image on social media from one of the latest episodes in production. You know, it's a bit hard to believe that we're coming into the home stretch on season 5. Didn't we just start the year? Didn't we just start the series? Everything begun in fall of 2012 has built to now. With it, we're coming full circle on the flashbacks, catching up to the moment that Oliver lit that signal fire to notify the passing ship that someone was stranded on Lian Yu. One of the striking first images of the series was that of a very familiar mask impaled by an arrow. It wasn't just that the stark split orange and black mask was atop a pike on the beach, an arrow piercing its eye hole like a warning, suggesting a very interesting backstory of the struggle on the island. It was that the mask seemingly belonged to Deathstroke, an important character from the comics that offered that the series was going to explore more of the DC universe than we'd imagined. But had Oliver Queen killed Deathstroke, of all people, during his 5 years stranded on the island? How and why would it have happened? And just what the hell was Slade Wilson doing on the same island? Obviously, we're now familiar with that story, and now we're getting back to that image in the next few episodes to tie everything together. Next in news, Arrow at Paley Fest. Wendy Mericle talks Felicity, Thea, and Honor Thy Fathers. Last Saturday, the annual Paley Fest hosted a DC TV panel featuring the 4 TV series on the CW. Our own Craig Byrne got a moment to speak with Arrow showrunner Wendy Mericle about what's coming up in the season for Felicity, for Thea, and the upcoming episode 21, Honor Thy Fathers. She's getting in deep, Mericle says, about Felicity with the hacker group Helix. She's gone down the rabbit hole, and she's going to find out that, like Anonymous and like WikiLeaks and like a lot of the real-world inspirations for all this, there are some moral gray areas in this world, and she's going to have some significant challenges trying to navigate those. I may have made a few cracks on the impression of a sort of low-rent feel to Helix last episode, but I actually do like this storyline for Felicity and the potential it holds. Felicity is a gifted hacker, obviously having made her bones as Ghost Fox Goddess, but more important with everything we've seen with Team Arrow. There are already some morally complex questions that her work with the heroes presents that we just take for granted for being good. In this day and age where hacking is so prominent and now relevant to the world's socio-political stage, Felicity is the perfect character to explore and address these questions and themes. But it shouldn't come as a surprise that this really will come down to execution in how effective it is. For Thea, Mericle mentions that she returns to town, still trying to make sense of who she is. I love Thea, Mericle says. I love her character. She's the daughter of sociopaths. How often can you say that? She started out as this teenage girl who was in private school, had a lot of money, and partied all the time, and now she's this woman who works in the mayor's office and is really good at her job. But she has this kind of darkness that she is constantly grappling with. She's going to be trying to understand her heritage, understand her family, and understand where she comes from, and I think that's something that every 20-something can relate to. Other than maybe the murder parents thing, I can see her point. How this ties into the season is going to gauge my real interest in it. Craig also asked about the fathers referenced in the title, Honor Thy Fathers, and Mericle shared somewhat of the obvious. There is no way that we can tell this story without Oliver talking about Robert. There's just no way to do it. This is our answer to season 1, and this is our answer to Oliver's whole journey. So I would say keep an eye out for Robert Queen somehow showing up on the show. Does that mean we're going to get another video? Are they going to do some kind of flashback? Will Jamie Sheridan grace the series in some weird fashion that sees Robert back to life in the past or present? Last we saw him was in the fake reality created by the Dominators back in the Mega crossover earlier in the season. Will we actually see more, or will it be references to Robert? I had this crazy thought watching Wednesday's episode before Oliver revealed his secret to Chase. What if Robert Queen was discovered alive on the island? And for whatever reason, Oliver ended up killing him before returning to Starling City to start the series. Yeah, that might be just a bit too pitch black for the show to bounce back from. Alright, our next item in the news, GATV interviews Stephen Amell about Arrow Season 5. Also at Paley Fest, Craig got the chance to speak with Stephen Amell for the longest interview GATV's had yet with the Arrow star. First, let me just take a moment to thank Stephen for his graciousness. He has always been kind to our site and to Craig. He's been supportive, open, and given us numerous shout-outs over the past 5 years. For me, personally, he's mentioned and directed a number of you kind folks to reviews of the show I've done, and he's generally been pretty cool. Beyond that, he's a fantastic ambassador for his show, a genuine fan. He also has one of the most remarkable memories of his series that I've ever heard an actor have. The way he knows his show and the details he recalls about specific episodes and given events is just astounding. Check out the interview at the site in both written and video forms. He talks about Season 5 on the whole, about Prometheus and Josh Segarra, about Oliver being mayor and how much he's enjoyed that aspect of the season. A couple of standout points he makes. Asked about who he'd like to see return to the show, he mentions Manu Bennett, our beloved Slade Wilson. I think we'd all agree that that would be a terrific character to have back on the show. He also mentions Lexa Doig, who plays Talia. Maybe she becomes a recurring presence like Nyssa or China White. He also brings up Samantha and Oliver's son William. I know that there are a lot who were not fans of the storyline, but I have to agree with him here, especially with how much the show focuses on the legacy of fathers. Further exploring that relationship for Oliver makes a lot of sense. When asked about Oliver's reaction to Felicity and Helix, he refers to episode 19, Dangerous Liaisons, as the Team Felicity versus Team Arrow episode. Ooh. It sounds like the Arrow gang and Helix are both going after Adrian Chase, pitting them against each other. This will finally force Oliver and Felicity to address a number of the things each have gone through this year, so that's one to keep an eye on. Stephen also talks about Dinah Drake joining the team, so check out the interview for that and more. All right, let's go on to our fourth item, the Disbanded preview trailer. Episode 518, coming up next week, deals with the fallout from Oliver's decision to give up his crusade as Green Arrow. He knows he can't leave Prometheus out there, though, so he turns to Anatoly and the Bratva to help him kill Chase. This would seem to put him at odds with his team, and there's this moment right towards the end of the trailer where Oliver hauls off and punches Diggle in the face, but good. No doubt Felicity is going to have some words to share about Oliver's direction as well. It would appear that Oliver doesn't want anything to happen to his teammates, so he barks Diggle off from pursuing Chase. The team doesn't seem to pay heed, and at one point Dinah is caught in a moment where Wild Dog has to fling himself through a window to take out a guy who might harm her. It looks like a pretty aggressive episode. We've got the trailer and screen caps from the trailer up on the site. Next in news, the ratings report for episode 17, Kapuishon. Okay, let's just take a moment here. Here is your weekly rant on the show's ratings, which sadly hit another series low this week with a final 1.38 million viewers and a 0.5 rating in the demo. The viewers continue to drop for Arrow week to week, and frankly, it's a travesty. The show is the best it's been in a long time, and people who tuned in during the heydays of season 2 should be scoping out one of the strongest villains and the strongest arcs that the show has ever done. It kills me. It kills me to see the numbers so low, even though the CW is down across the board. And I hope those that are still following the show, either through our site or online elsewhere, but aren't watching it or maybe catching up with it on DVR a few weeks later, I hope they're tuning in week to week now and convince some buddies to give it some looks as well. As we go to the run up to the finale, now is the time to bring people back on board because the show is doing some great things, and I hope that people actually take a moment to take notice. That's my piece. All right, moving on. Next in the news is the Disbanded preview images. In addition to the trailer, we got the official images for episode 18, Disbanded. There is a focus on Oliver still having to deal with Chase in the mayor's office on the regular day-to-day, something that Quentin seems not too pleased with. We also get a couple of shots of Oliver with Susan Williams that don't look too happy. Speaking with our buddy Matt Midovich over at TV Line, Wendy Mericle comments on their relationship post her kidnapping by Chase. I don't know how you overcome that, she says. I mean, Susan's still there, she's on the show, and we love Carly, but for any couple that's been through that kind of trauma, and trauma that ultimately Susan can trace back to Oliver in some ways, let's just say that's a tough thing to come back from. There's also a focus on Felicity with Helix in the images, which Helix feels more fleshed out in these images than we've seen so far. They don't give away what Helix is asking Felicity to do in exchange for trying to find Oliver when Chase captured him, though. And finally, in this week's spoiler room at Entertainment Weekly, Mark Guggenheim talks briefly about the season finale. We're not going to destroy the city, he says. We're not even going to threaten the city. In fact, I can also tell you the finale doesn't even take place in the city. Finally, the citizens of Star City can breathe easily in May. This is roughly what we've figured given the direction of the season, and it's great to hear confirmation that they aren't focusing on yet another wide-scale terror event. This season really is personal to Oliver, so it only makes sense that the finale will focus on that. Guggenheim also drops this tidbit. You can expect a good number of returning characters you haven't seen in a while, back in the episode. We're hearing someone might return to the cast for next season. Could they show up in this episode? Oh, and one last bit of news. The Count's real name is Cecil Adams, Chase reveals. What an odd bit to just toss out there. But it's fun. It's always fun to get world building in small ways like that. You'll find links to all of these news items in the episode article at greenarrowtv.com, as well as in the description on the YouTube channel. Feel free to leave comments on each article, on the episode article, at the Arrow Forum, on the KSite TV forums, or on YouTube. Okay, gang, let's move on to the review and discussion of this week's episode of Arrow, episode 517, Kapuishon, or Kapuishon, or however you want to pronounce it. Let's talk about it. Oh boy. So, Oliver likes to kill. It's revelatory, but also not altogether that shocking. It fits with Oliver's personality. It's also why he finds himself coming back to it so often. Oliver likes, no, needs to be in control. Having the ultimate control over whether someone lives or dies fits. It brings up a hell of a psychological weight to the series in perhaps a way nothing else has done previous. Quite honestly, it changes the audience's relationship to Oliver and to the show. It's going to be interesting to see over the next 6 episodes how Oliver can regain some sympathy. The smart choice made about this hour was to focus purely on Chase trying to get what he wanted from Oliver. Even the flashbacks where Oliver leads the charge to kill Kovar for Anatoly's Bratva were distinctly designed to inform the idea that Oliver and his supposed monster inside were the same man, and splitting them a huge rationalization to somehow make himself okay with becoming a vicious killer. Chase's whole intent was to break Oliver, and he succeeded. It was a masterful showdown for both Josh Segarra and Stephen Amell. Amell has stated that it was maybe his most emotionally and physically tough episode to film of the series. He hurt his back, but also had to give in to some personally gutting emotional territory for his character. I know people dismiss what actors do as an easy task and often just some elaborate game of pretend. They say it's nothing more than what children do. Many also think of someone getting into character as the stereotypical method acting, cracking jokes about actors demanding that they be referred to by their character's name when they're not filming or on stage, or spending time outside of the part living as the person to get a feel for their life and worldview. There is more to it than that, and forgive the pun, a method to the madness. And while actors should never confuse their character's emotional state with their own, you do reach to places that can be very taxing to honestly present what the character is going through. Good acting might get lost on a number of people. The sheer volume of actors who have won awards and accolades and praise for boisterous speeches or character quirks and tics is mind-boggling. But there is an innate human sense that can tell when something is not being expressed genuinely. Often it's the small moments, the quiet performances, the subtle choices that resonate more with people, whether it's immediately apparent to them or not. These tend to be what make a performance, a story, a world believable. And actors who are actually working and not just getting their pretty mugs on screens put in the effort for these moments. Sanford Meisner, a theater actor, director, teacher who came from the same pool that developed method acting, refers to this as living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And it takes a hell of a lot more work than many would think. When Oliver just arrives in the bunker after Chase has let him go, just casually strolls in, he is emotionally drained and exhausted. He's obviously been physically tortured, but he's also crushed. Less by anything Chase has done and more by the admission of his secret. If anything, it's the first time Oliver's really been honest with himself about it. And Amell really sells it. His voice is smaller, his energy as a person, as the character, is directed inward, and it makes him smaller. It's a rough place to go as an actor, but it feels genuine and believable to the character. What really stands out about the episode is that it was just this discussion to get at that pesky truth. Sure, Chase spends his time physically harming Oliver to make him too weak to keep up his emotional guard. The drowning, the arrows to the chest, squaring off Evelyn against him under the false pretense and then pretending to snap her neck. Even putting Oliver in the chains behind the barred door is psychological. It's meant to cage a control freak, something that drives control freaks anxious and nuts. Oliver's been through more than his share of torture in life, so Chase is aware that the physical won't get it done. It's those little things, and then the needling that hits right at the core of who Oliver is, that finally cracks him open. And it's quite a dispiriting moment to watch. Intercutting the buildup of that scene with the Kovar fight and flashback, and Anatoly telling his friend that he doesn't have to give in to his rage while he does, was terrific plotting and editing. This was another instance where the flashbacks directly pertain to the present story, and to have them embrace that approach has really made those interludes both relevant and appealing. We get some lovely work between David Nickel and Amell. In particular, the moment Anatoly and Oliver both get their Bratva tattoos for the supposed belief that Kovar is dead, and then the discussion outside right after, referencing their time on the Amazo back in season 2 and seeing how far things have come. You really have to appreciate Anatoly's time on the show as a touchstone. With Oliver turning to him and the Bratva in the present to deal with Chase, you have to imagine that our favorite Russian is going to play a significant role in Oliver finding himself through this darkness. That's really where Oliver's strength is going to lie as they close out this 5-year arc. When we see him in season 1, this is a young man who has lost his humanity, and he approaches taking down the names on his father's list in brutal, methodical fashion and authority. His arc that first season, specifically with Diggle's help, was in finding his humanity again. So, while Oliver wanted, and apparently liked, to kill, there is enough goodness in him to have brought these various people into his life. This is a pretty dark direction to take a main character of a show, especially a show about a hero, but there is goodwill set up in the actions of the man over the past 5 seasons. While the admission certainly mars our understanding and approval of Oliver, we also know that there is more to this man than what that admission presents. It's that sliver that helps to make the task of regaining audience sympathy more than a lost cause. Kapuishon, however you pronounce it, is in many ways a bottle episode. Here, specifically designed to force Oliver and Adrian face to face, to get at that base and emotional truth of his crusade. It's an effort to tear Oliver down by admitting this truth to himself, and it appears to work. The hour is marked by strong acting from both the protagonist and the antagonist, as well as a relevant story that causes us to rethink the series. As a follow-up to last week's superb chapter, this strengthens and deepens the story while continuing to set up what's sure to be a wallop of a finale. So, what did you think of this week's episode? And what do you predict for how things are going to move forward? As per the usual, let us know in all the normal places. All right, let's move on to this week's list. will constantly be debates over whether a live-action adaptation of a comic book character should be slavishly respectful to the source material or take that concept and spirit of the character and develop something new out of it. There are great examples for either approach. Christopher Reeve's Superman is the benchmark for a faithful adaptation of a character's look, ethos, standing, and actor's approach. David Goyer's and Wesley Snipes' version of Blade was in many ways very different from the source material, but distilled the core of the character perfectly. Their version was so successful that the comics incorporated it. Arrow is a series known to put their own spin on things. Even right now, the character we all thought who was going to be Vigilante is quite different. So in the list this week, we ask, which are the top 3 differently adapted comic characters on the show? Number 3, Thea Queen. Oliver Queen was an only child in the comics, so the immediate addition of a younger sister was a big change for the show. That he referred to her as Speedy was also telling. The name was the nickname given to the comic book Green Arrow's young sidekicks, starting with Roy Harper, before he moved on to Arsenal and then Red Arrow. I believe he's back to using Arsenal now. Oliver got another sidekick in Mia Dearden, a homeless teen who was turned to a life of prostitution and became HIV infected. She trained with Oliver and subsequently earned his trust, taking on the name Speedy and joining Green Arrow out on the streets. The show was coy with Thea's origins until it was revealed that Moira Queen's maiden name was Dearden, and Thea's full given name is Thea Dearden Queen. Of course, Thea is also the daughter of Malcolm Merlyn, the result of an unfortunate tryst between Malcolm and Moira. Robert Queen took Thea into his home and came to love her as his own daughter, the parents hiding Thea's true heritage from her until much later. Thea was a drug addict party girl who eventually got her life straight. She would run off to train with her birth father Malcolm on the island of Corto Maltese, following her mother's death, and learning that her brother Oliver was the Arrow. On the island, she went by the name Mia. Returning to Starling City, she would inherit a costume from her former boyfriend Roy Harper and become the costume Speedy, fighting alongside her brother. Number 2, Lila Michaels Diggle. In the comics, Lila Michaels was a young orphan rescued from death by the celestial being known as the Monitor. She would eventually grow into his assistant, helping to maintain the universal balance against the entity known as the Anti-Monitor. When the Anti-Monitor began a massive attack on the DC multiverse, the Monitor placed Lila in a cocoon so that she could produce doppelgangers of herself to go around to the various Earths and recruit heroes to fight the Anti-Monitor. She became known as Harbinger. Everything she did in the so-called Crisis on Infinite Earths is a bit convoluted to get into here, but she was instrumental in stopping the Anti-Monitor and merging all the universes into a single universe. Of course, DC would later reverse course and bring back the multiverse. The Arrow version of the character is quite different. She was a soldier in the same military unit as John Diggle, fighting in Afghanistan. The two fell in love, had a passionate affair, and they got married. When they returned to the States, they both felt something was missing from their lives, and when Diggle's brother Andy was believed killed, they split. Lila went to work for Argus, making her way through the ranks to become Amanda Waller's second in command. When Diggle was on the hunt for Deadshot back in Season 1 to avenge his brother, he turned to Lila to help. They grew close once more, resuming their relationship. She and Johnny would partner on 2 iterations of the Suicide Squad, where she went by the field name of Harbinger. They would have a daughter, nix that, a son, together and remarry. With Amanda Waller being killed by Shadowspire, Lila assumed command of Argus. And in the top spot, Anatoly Knyazev. Introduced in the comics in Batman number 417 back in 1988 by writer Jim Starlin and artist Jim Aparo, Anatoly, spelled with an I instead of a Y like the series, is a vicious Russian assassin trained by a top secret cell of the KGB back when the Soviet Union still existed. In addition to knowing martial arts, he was cybernetically enhanced to be a formidable killing machine. He was so deadly that the CIA referred to him as KG Beast. The character was imprisoned by Batman, but eventually broke free once the Soviet Union fell and became a supervillain. He was eventually killed and resurrected as a member of the Black Lantern Corps, essentially the DCU's version of The Walking Dead during the Blackest Night storyline. In the New 52, Anatoly was known as the Beast and also as a devil worshipper. In any case, the character appears in the movie Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice as Lex Luthor's hired military thug and gunrunner who shot Jimmy Olsen in Africa. He was eventually killed by Batman when he was holding Martha Kent hostage. Now, obviously, for the show, they took a different tack and made Anatoly a member of the Russian mob, captured by Professor Ivo to run his Mericle experiments. While Anatoly is generally a fun and lighthearted guy, he takes his relationship with the Bratva seriously and has acted in violent and aggressive means. Still, he's a light for Oliver and a friend who has seen him through his dark transition. And there is your list for the week. What do you think? Who do you have as the best of the characters on the show that were developed very different from their comic counterparts? I'm interested to see who else might have competed for these top spots. And that'll bring us to the close of our show and this week's Stance, a GATV op-ed. Felicity Smoke, who finally picked up the codename Overwatch last season, is set to get a hero identity and a costume later this TV season. The twist, not on Arrow, but on DC's Legends of Tomorrow. If you haven't been following Legends this season, and really you should catch up with it, it's just a fun, dorky show with heart and sci-fi trappings that's a big improvement over last year. The team has been facing off against the Legion of Doom, comprised of Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, Malcolm Merlyn, and Damien Darhk. Wait, you say. Aren't two of those fellas dead? Sure enough, Eobard Thawne was erased from existence when his ancestor, Eddie Thawne, took his own life to erase the bloodline. The Speed Force kept remnants of Eobard at various points in time to preserve the timeline, but Barry Allen captured the one that would kill his mother before killing her, creating the Flashpoint timeline. Barry corrected this, but Eobard ran free and has been trying to outrun his apparent death since. Now, Damien Darhk was killed last season of Arrow, but Thawne plucked a version from the 1980s to help he and Malcolm Merlyn recover the fragments of the Spear of Destiny, the famed weapon used by a Roman to pierce the abdomen of Jesus Christ on the cross. The spear is thought to possess special abilities, and in the Arrowverse version, it can rewrite reality. In the second to last episode of the season for Legends, an hour called Doomworld, the Legion has rewritten reality and changed things for a number of our heroes. A few weeks back, Mark Guggenheim teased that someone from one of the other shows would appear on Legends in a way we'd never seen them before. This week, he revealed that to be Felicity Smoke, who will be a hero in the field donning a black and purple costume that's a bit similar to the current version of the Huntress in the comics. Yes, folks, they went ahead and put Felicity in a costume. This is the sort of the ultimate having cake and eating it scenario, and I have to say, I'm actually fine with it. Now, that might be shocking because I'm on record for never wanting them to jam Felicity in a suit and put her out on the streets to physically fight crime alongside the others. From a character perspective, it would just never make sense. Her skills and talents are far better used with what she's doing. We have plenty on the team masked. Some would say too many. There were rumors coming into this season and earlier this year of the potential that it might be Felicity who would fill Laurel's shoes. The idea of Hack Canary never sat well with me, and if such a development occurred on Arrow proper, I would be extremely disappointed. But here, they have a chance to show us an alternate reality, a chance to play with perceptions and do things they would never attempt in regular continuity on the other series. This is the DC Elseworlds, or the Marvel What If version of events, and it's the kind of opportunity to have fun without real consequence. So I'm for it. I don't ever need to see Felicity in a costume, but if they want to take a fun stab at an alt reality where she spends her nights in one, have at it. I just have one expectation: entertain me. That's going to do it for this week. Thanks again for listening. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, comment on the article at GreenArrowTV.com. Share your thoughts on the Arrow Forum on the K-Site TV forums. Get a hold of us on social media at GreenArrowTV. You can find me on Twitter at MattBCTucker. That's Matt Bravo Charlie Tucker. And I don't want to do this episode anymore. I'll talk to you guys next week. Peas and carrots.